The Final Descent, Hitler's Failing Body and the Collapse of the Third Reich. Narrator, deep, solemn. In the final years of the Second World War, as Europe burned and millions fought for survival, another silent war raged in the shadows, a war inside the mind and body of Adolf Hitler. The man who once stood before roaring crowds as a prophet of conquest was decaying, physically, mentally, spiritually. This is the story of that decay, a descent into trembling hands, clouded judgment, chemical dependence, paranoia, and madness. Welcome to Hitler's Final Collapse. Part 1. The Early Years, a Body Built on Obsession. Long before he became the dictator of Germany, young Adolf Hitler's health was already shaped by obsession and fear. He distrusted doctors, believed illness followed him, and lived with the constant dread that he would die young, just like his mother, whose slow death from cancer scarred him deeply. He exercised rarely, ate poorly, yet somehow remained physically stable. He believed his will alone could shape his body, but time would prove him wrong. Part 2. The Nazi Rise and the Illusion of Strength, 4-7. When he seized power in 1933, Hitler crafted an image, a tireless leader, a warrior of destiny, a man gifted with superhuman energy. Behind the scenes, the truth was different. He suffered from chronic stomach pain, intestinal spasms, migraines, insomnia, and severe anxiety. To hide his frailty from the German people, he turned increasingly to his personal physician, Dr. Theodor Morell, a man who would become both his healer and his destroyer. Morell administered vitamins, hormones, narcotics, injections, and experimental concoctions, most of them untested, many addictive. And Hitler welcomed them. Part 3. World War I. The Birth of a Legend and a Scar, 7-9. To the public, Hitler spoke of being blinded by mustard gas in World War I, an event he portrayed as spiritual awakening. But historians know another possibility. He may have been hospitalized for another illness entirely, one far more taboo, late-stage syphilis. Whether gas or disease, one thing is certain: his time in the hospital shaped him. It was there he heard Germany had surrendered. There he claimed to have a vision of his destiny, and there the seed of his hatred was born. The body had already begun its long war with the mind. Part 4, 1944. The Assassination Attempt and the Shattered Body, 20. July 1944. A briefcase bomb detonates beneath the map table inside the Wolf's lair. The blast tears through the room, and Hitler survives, but not unscathed. His eardrums burst. His right arm is nearly crippled. His legs and face are pierced with wooden splinters. His balance falters. His hearing weakens. His voice becomes thin, raspy, uncertain. And the tremors, the constant relentless shaking in his left hand, grow worse. The legend of the invincible Führer dies that day. Part 5. The Unraveling. Drugs, paranoia, and the fall of reason. By 1943, Hitler was consuming more than 20 to 30 pills a day, plus multiple injections. Dr. Morell's secret arsenal included methamphetamine, barbiturates, opioids, cocaine, bromide sedatives, belladonna-laced gas tablets, experimental hormonal extracts, a chemical empire coursing through his veins. The side effects were brutal: wild mood swings, chronic insomnia, violent outbursts, disorganized thinking delusions, and increasing dependence on Morell, the only man who could stabilize him. The Führer of Germany had become a slave to needles and powders. His generals watched in horror as he ranted for hours, repeated himself, lost focus, and issued irrational commands. The empire was falling, and its leader was crumbling even faster. Part 6. Parkinson's, Huntington's, or something worse. Modern historians and neurologists have tried to make sense of Hitler's symptoms: the trembling left arm, the shuffling steps, the stooped posture, the weakened voice, the masked facial expression. Many believe he suffered from Parkinson's disease. Others claim Huntington's. Some point to late-stage syphilis. A few even blame the cocktails of drugs Morell injected into him daily. Whatever the cause, one conclusion is clear. Hitler, the man who promised a 1,000-year Reich, could barely control his own body. Part 7. The Final Months. The Sunset of a Madman. March 1945. Berlin is burning. The Soviets are closing in. And Hitler steps into the open for the last time. Film footage shows a ghost. Thin, shaking, stooped, dragging his feet, barely able to speak, barely able to lift his hand in salute. His eyes, once lit with fanatic fire, are dull and lifeless. He looks not 56, but 80. Inside the bunker, his rants grow incoherent. He berates phantom armies that no longer exist. He trusts no one, not even his generals. The world outside collapses, yet he remains locked in his own mind, a prisoner of delusions, drugs, and disease. On April 30th, 1945, Adolf Hitler ends his life, not as the titan he imagined, not as the godlike figure Nazi propaganda had crafted, but as a trembling, broken man ruined by his own choices, consumed by paranoia, poisoned by his own doctor, and crushed beneath the weight of the empire he built on lies. Closing monologue. Narrator. History remembers Hitler as one of the darkest figures to ever walk the earth. But what is often forgotten is how rapidly he deteriorated, how weak he truly was, how fragile the monster became. His empire fell, his ideology collapsed, and his body, once shielded by myth, betrayed him in the end. From triumph to trembling, from power to decay. This was the final descent of Adolf Hitler, the poisoned throne, the hidden decline of Adolf Hitler before the fall. Before the world saw the trembling hands, before the bunker walls closed in, before the Third Reich drowned in fire, the slow death of Adolf Hitler had already begun, not with bullets, not with bombs, but with fear, obsession, and the one enemy he could never escape, his own body. To understand his fall, we must return to the beginning of the decay, the first cracks in a mind destined to crumble. From childhood, Hitler lived with a haunting premonition that he would die young. His mother's death carved that fear into his psyche like a scar. He watched her suffer, cancer devouring her, doctors whispering behind closed doors. He grew obsessed with illness, convinced death followed him like a shadow. Throughout his youth, he refused doctors, refused examinations, believed medicine was a conspiracy to weaken him. He carried this paranoia into adulthood, a deep, psychological wound that years later would shape the destiny of millions. When he seized power, he crafted a myth. Hitler, the tireless leader. Hitler, the sleepless strategist. Hitler, the chosen one. Crowds saw a man who never rested, who gave speeches with lightning in his eyes, who stood for hours on cold platforms without wavering. But the private reality was drastically different. Behind the closed doors of the Reich Chancellery, Hitler suffered from crippling stomach pains, sudden collapses, wild mood swings, and episodes of rage so intense that his staff feared his footsteps in the hall. Yet outwardly, the myth endured, for Germany needed a god, and Hitler would do anything to look like one. Enter Dr. Theodor Morell, a doctor famous not for brilliance, but for ambition. A man the Nazi elite mocked behind his back, calling him the quack, the snake oil sorcerer, the magician of injections. but Hitler loved him. Morell arrived at a time when Hitler felt weak, exhausted, and desperate. After a single vitamin injection, Hitler felt revived, energized. He declared Morell a medical genius. From that day forward, Morell controlled the dictator's body. He treated him not with discipline or science, but with a chaotic storm of pills, powders, hormones, and experimental concoctions. Hitler became dependent, not just physically, but emotionally. Morell became the gatekeeper of his strength and the architect of his downfall. To understand Hitler's addiction, you must understand the world he created. Nazi Germany was built on a culture of chemical ambition. Scientists produced Pervitin, a methamphetamine tablet sold over the counter, marketed as the miracle pill that made soldiers march for days without sleep. German tank crews swallowed it like candy. Pilots used it to stay awake through endless missions. Factory workers depended on it to maintain impossible production schedules. It was the drug of a nation racing toward destruction, and at the top of that nation, Hitler consumed more chemicals than anyone. He preached purity, yet filled his veins with stimulants and narcotics. He demanded discipline, yet lived in biological chaos. Inside the marble halls of Berlin, the master of Germany became its most fragile addict. As the war intensified, Hitler's days and nights reversed. He slept through daylight. He awakened at dusk, like a creature emerging from a cave. Meetings shifted to 2 a.m., 3 a.m., even sunrise. Witnesses described him as two different men. Daytime Hitler, weak, sluggish, trembling, haunted by migraines. Nighttime Hitler, hyperactive, euphoric, pacing wildly across maps, eyes burning with unnatural intensity. The truth? Morell dosed him differently depending on the hour in the morning. Opiates, sedatives, antispasmodics. At night, methamphetamine injections, cocaine drops, and high-dose stimulants. By 1944, Hitler's body wasn't controlling the drugs were controlling him. His generals saw the change. They whispered among themselves, "The Führer is no longer the Führer." Multiple eyewitnesses recorded the same transformation. His valet, Heinz Linger, his secretary, Traudl Junge, his adjutant, Otto Günsche, his physicians, Haase and Schenk. They all described a man collapsing from the inside. His skin became gray and waxy. His breath carried a strange chemical odor. He scratched his arms obsessively. His hands trembled so violently that he hid them behind his back. His walks became shuffles, short, hesitant, uneven. His voice, once a storm, became a whisper. Throat strained, lungs weakened, willpower fading. The God image crumbled, revealing a dying mortal underneath. By 1945, Hitler's decisions were no longer strategic. They were delusional. He dismissed entire armies that existed only on paper. He screamed at generals who tried to explain reality. He believed Germany would be saved by miracle weapons, technology that did not exist. He accused loyal officers of betrayal. He imagined enemies in every shadow. In meetings, he ranted for hours, repeating himself, forgetting his own orders moments after giving them. Historians debate the cause: Parkinson's disease, drug-induced psychosis, syphilitic dementia, crushing stress, a lifetime of untreated trauma. Perhaps it was all of them. Perhaps the body and mind collapsed together, unable to carry the weight of the empire he forged. By January 1945, Hitler retreated into the Führer bunker. The once mighty dictator had become a phantom, pale, shaking, hunched, nearly blind in one eye. Morell's treatments grew desperate. He pumped Hitler with stimulants to keep him conscious, then sedatives to force him asleep, a brutal cycle that destroyed any remaining mental stability. Outside, Berlin starved. Inside, Hitler lived in a chemical fog. As Soviet artillery thundered overhead, he paced the bunker corridors, muttering to himself, hands clasped behind his back to hide the tremors, face gaunt and ghost-like. The end was no longer a possibility. It was inevitable.